What up, people? Pusha Wild Black here, and I am going to get to read you guys an ACLU article about a proposed change in the ADA and give my opinion on the article. This is going to be just a regular vlog. I know I've been on the sports stuff, but this channel does sometimes go into the disability rights aspect of things because I'm a black man with a disability, and sometimes, duty calls. Okay. The Americans with Disabilities Act is the most comprehensive and foundational civil rights law prohibiting discrimination on the basis of disabilities. Yet, 27 years after it's passed, people with disabilities still face enormous barriers. People with mobility disabilities routinely find themselves blocked from the simplest of social interactions. They're unable to go to the corner store to pick up a quart of milk because there's a step at the door. They're unable to go to a movie theater with their friends because there's no accessible seating. They might be able to get into the door of a restaurant, but they are stymied if they have to go to the bathroom while they're there because it is the size of a postage stamp. Title III of the ADA creates a proactive duty on businesses to remove architectural barriers and other obstacles that impede access to the establishment. But businesses have resisted making such changes for decades, and now they're asking Congress to help them. A harmful new bill in the House of Representatives, the so-called ADA Education and Reform Act of 2017, H.R. 620, is gaining steam. It will be debated in the House Judiciary Committee on Thursday morning, which means at the point of this recording, because it is 12:55, it already happened, and may go to the House floor for vote soon thereafter. We must stop this bill from ever becoming law. H.R. 620 would completely change the way in which a business is required to comply with the ADA. Instead of requiring that business to comply proactively, the bill would place the burden on an individual who's being denied access. The process says that after an individual with a disability is denied access, she must first notify the business owner with exacting specificity that their civil rights were violated, and then wait for 6 months to see if the business will make substantial progress toward access before going to court to order compliance. Business owners can spend years out of compliance and face no penalty even after they receive notice, so long as they claim substantial process. By allowing a business an endless amount of time to become compliant, the ADA's reasonable requirements, H.R. 60, removes any incentive for businesses to proactively ensure that people with disabilities have access. Instead, the bill encourages businesses to just wait until individual civil rights are violated before making any changes. Those who support H.R. 620, particularly business groups, have argued that the bill only makes a minor and non-controversial change to the ADA. They claim that the bill merely gives business owners additional time to make their facility accessible after they are notified of the problem. This argument is spacious at best and should be rejected. Supporters of the legislation ignore that shifting the burden in the bill goes completely against how our nation has enforced civil rights laws since the passage of the landmark Civil Rights Act of 1964. When Congress passed the Civil Rights Act, it included a provision that allowed an individual who is denied access to a public accommodation because of race, color, religion, or national origin to immediately seek relief and gain access. The enforcement mechanism served as a powerful and incentivizing tool to ensure businesses proactively comply with the law. The success of the public accommodation provision in the Civil Rights Act influenced Congress when drafting the Americans with Disabilities Act. The public accommodation enforcement provision in the ADA is modeled on the enforcement provision in 1964 Civil Rights Act. Congress recognized that the civil rights of people with disabilities and their access to places of public accommodations should be treated no differently than the civil rights protections based on race, color, religion, and national origin. This principle stood in law for more than a quarter of a century, but now some in Congress are trying to change the way our country treats civil rights of people with disabilities. That's why, let's see, so as people with disabilities and protective. Let me read that sentence again. The principle has stood in law for more than a quarter of a century, but now some in Congress are trying to change the way our country treats the civil rights of people with disabilities. That is why the ACLU is fighting to ensure that the guarantees of the ADA continue, that the civil rights of people with disabilities are protected, and in keeping with the intent of Congress, that they are treated no differently than others. It is imperative that members of Congress stand up for the rights of people with disabilities. The Judiciary Committee in the House of Representatives is planning to vote and debate H.R. 620 on Thursday. The ACLU is urging all members of the committee to vote against the bill and stop it from going to the full House for vote. The bottom line is the people who use wheelchairs and have other needs deserve the same right to visit local businesses as any other individual. Forcing people with disabilities to wait months to visit a supermarket or a bookstore is precisely the kind of discrimination the ADA was designed to prevent. Businesses have had more than enough notification to comply with disability rights law. People with disabilities deserve equal access today. Civil rights should not be delayed or tied up in bureaucratic red tape. Okay, that last line makes me laugh because I'm going through this now in another facet. But anyway, on to my thoughts of the article. I agree that this article should be, that this law should be voted against. I understand why they did it. They did it basically because, see, there's a grandfathered clause in the ADA where, and it's weird because there's no universal design as far as ADA compliance. Meaning, like, the bathroom thing, I find hilarious. He brought up the bathroom situation. I'm in a manual chair, and I use a walker periodically when I go out with people. Going to the bathroom in a public place on a walker is difficult because sometimes you can't fit your walker in the bathroom because basically the only requirement really is a balance bar. There's no real standard like measurements. If there is, they don't follow them at all. There's no standard measurements for every chair. Like my chair is relatively little. If you go on a scooter, there's a problem. If you're in an electric wheelchair, there's a problem. The bathrooms are not good, right? So that's what I mean by universal design. It's not fit for. We have specifications for everything, which is how. And I'll go into why this law is thinking about being put in an addendum now. We have specifications, but they don't fit every mobility impairment. That's the issue. So the specifications aren't are there. The specifications aren't good. Um, a lot of people just think that, okay, we're gonna put a ramp on the in our parking lot so we can get in, but we have inclines and all types of things. Sometimes the incline is weird and your chair can tip over, or you feel the sensation of tipping over. So it's weird. It's a weird. The ADA is weird, right? It's not. It's broken. I've been saying it for years. The Americans with Disabilities Act is a broken one. Okay, so what this does is this weakens an already weak Civil Rights Act, because as a whole, it's not a good one. I can probably going to go into another video about how this ADA has failed me and has failed a lot of other people, specifically people of color with disabilities. But I'm not going to do that in this one. I will. The bad part about this one is the 6-month waiting period. But I see why they did that, because advocates don't want to change the law and don't want to make the law better. We want to sue. Every ADA issue ends up with a lawsuit, and with small businesses, because this is not going to affect Walmart or Barnes and Noble or whatever, right? This isn't really going to affect them. This is going to affect, although it can, because sometimes big box and bigger stores get sued because of aisle situations, right? That happens too. But for the most part, this happens with the people that have a small business, that the building was built before 1973, which was the grandfather date, where you don't really have to do a full renovation as far as accessibility goes. So any building before, I think it was 73, you don't really have to worry about building accommodations for everybody. There doesn't have to be an elevator. There doesn't have to be. All there really has to be is a ramp to get to the door, to get through the door. I've lost jobs because of that grandfather law, right? That needs to be changed. Before anything else, we need to make sure that needs to change at all. Like, I understand the point of the article, and I understand that we need to solve this problem, but that needs to change as well. Because the problem is, what this is affecting small and mid-sized business owners. This is also affecting independently owned. This also can affect independently owned apartments as well, which I can get into that real quick. Independently owned apartments, they don't have, because I've dealt with this, they don't have to advertise people with disabilities, because if you advertise, the city will check your apartment, and if you don't fit the ADA law there, they can take you to court, and the apartment owner can get sued for that. I've actually had conversations with people, with independent apartment owners on this, because I've tried to rent apartments from independent apartment owners, because sometimes they're cheaper than going to a big apartment. And they said like, man, I can rent you one, but you'd have to handle everything, because I can't do it, because the city will sue me. So, and I tell you now, like, it would be hard for you to do laundry, because our laundry room isn't accessible. So people are just not gonna service us, because they just don't want to deal with it. Because what used to happen, or what has happened, is we have disability lawyers that they don't know who's in the bill. They go around, and this was caught in the 60 Minutes special that they did on this, about over the summer or so, or over the spring. Everybody was tripping out about that story, and saying that story was false and that story was whatever. And it's like, no, that's what they do. There are lawyers and there are people with disabilities that do this. I know some of them because I was pressured into doing this, right? There are people with disabilities and there are lawyers and there are advocates that they go around and they see fault with something and it's an ADA violation and it doesn't affect them, but they're going to sue anyway because they feel like we're going to change the situation or we're going to get some money, right? So, but it doesn't matter because people in the community, there's not disabled people in the community. Why should we have a ramp on the door or by the door? This should be enough, right? No, it isn't, because people are like, it's not ADA specified, so we're going to sue, or we're going to put a complaint. You can fix the complaint, or we can go to court, and that happens. And people have gotten approached. I've gotten approached, and it's like, and I've been in situations where I was discriminated against, but I also know that it takes years to get something done, and it's like, well, is it really worth, and this is on a job, and I'm not going to go into the story, but is it really worth me messing up jobs for about 4 or 5 other disabled people because I'm inconvenienced? And this is a temporary job. So that's what this is for. This is for the people that are in these small businesses that got these buildings and they're really old and they don't have they're not under the ADA time period. They're grandfathered in, and then they have to fix things later. So people would sue them, and people would complain, I'm getting sued, I'm getting all these things put against me, there's no disabled people here, somebody just noticed it, and now I'm going to get sued for this. And the thing is, that happens. That happens often, and a lot of people want to say. So you got business owners, and we have a fiscal Republican in office, right? And we have a fiscal Republican Congress, and we have a fiscal Republican cabinet. So when business owners are saying, hey, this is a problem, and they put this in there to give you 6 months to basically not do anything, because we've been doing this, putting the onus on the person that's getting discriminated against. We've been doing that forever. Like, they've been doing that forever. Like, I've told businesses, hey, y'all need a ramp here. I've told businesses, hey, you need a ramp here. Hey, you need a way to get in. I've tried to get sidewalks built in cities, in suburbs. We've been doing that. So that part of the article, I'm like, okay, that's been happening. The 6-month thing is the issue, right? And it just means that you have to wait before you sue. So, which sucks because, to the point of the article, there should be no reason for you to have to wait. You should just go ahead and if you want to sue, you should be able to. Now, I don't agree with lawsuits all the time because I don't think that really works. I don't think that really solves the problem ultimately, because it hasn't really. The reason why these situations keep happening where there's lawsuits that always happen is because there's nothing in the ADA that really says, like, there's no enforcement of the ADA. Yeah, it's written down, but no one really enforces anything unless there's a lawsuit involved. So, I don't know. Like, I think it's a bad idea, the 6-month waiting period, but we've been dealing with this forever. You know what I'm saying? The protections that the ADA, quote unquote, has are incomplete. I've been saying it for years. And probably knowing this Congress, this bill will pass. And there are just going to be a lot of 6-month waiting periods before lawsuits happen. I think this is a big deal for some people. I don't think it'll change anything. I just think we're just gonna have to wait. I think the problem isn't with the addendum of this. I think the problem is with the ADA itself and how we in the disabled community, as far us, the normal people with disabilities, the lawyers, and the advocates, and I call myself an advocate, how we deal with ADA compliance is the reason why this provision is written and is going to be talked about. Because when we're not changing the law and we have people that are not in the community, that's another thing too. We have people not in the communities trying to get ADA violations. You're not in the community. You're just noticing things and you're mentioning stuff. You're not in the community. You don't deal in the community. You don't deal with these people. They don't see a face. You know what I'm saying? I've fought public transportation systems in Dallas. I've been in advocacy groups in Dallas. Not by much, not a lot, but they know me. Like the Dallas community knows me. Like DART knows me. Dallas Area Rapid Transit, they know who I am. Okay? Like I fought them for years. They're better now. They're a lot better now, but they were bad like 10 years ago. There's a face with the advocacy there. If you're like in ADAPT or something and there's a face there or there's an organization, cool. Like, but you have a lot of people, and these are lawyers basically. You have a lot of lawyers and you have a lot of people that are just finding, and honestly, you have some disabled people too that are like, okay, I see an opportunity to get over, or I see an opportunity to make money or cause an issue, and they want to cause an issue, and then they wonder why. And then everybody else, like me, when situations like this happen, everybody's like, well, why did this happen? Like, why is this bill being talked about? It's because there are people in the community that don't speak for the community, or there are people in the community that try to get over using the ADA, and not using the ADA to change the ADA to where this is not a problem anymore, but they want to use it to sue and make money. And I know people personally who do this as a strategy. They like, okay, I'm offended, so I'm gonna sue now. But you're not gonna, because of the ADA. But you're not gonna change the ADA though. And it's like, that's why this was written. That's why a bunch of fiscal Republicans are listening to small business owners or lazy mid-sized business owners not want to do something, and now they want to put it into law that they don't have to do anything. Because by waiting the 6 months, you're gonna wait the 6 months, then you're gonna have to go into court, then it's gonna take 2-3 years for them to try to make these people go to court. That's already been happening. The only difference is the point of we're going to sue, you're gonna have to wait for that point to get here. But as far as the 2 years of them not being in compliance, it's already happening. It's been here. So it sucks. I don't like it. It's bad. But I think as advocates and I think as people with disabilities, not only do we need to worry about this, but we also need to think about how to better change the Americans with Disabilities Act, because it has holes. And it has holes. There's really no compliance. There's really no compliance, really. It's only an issue. This became an issue when lawyers started saying things. When lawyers started threatening lawsuits to small and mid-sized businesses, and advocates started doing the same, this is when it became an issue. There's no like compliancy thing or board, to my knowledge, to where this is a thing, where, okay, this is a problem, like, let's fix the problem. And that's what we need. And we need to fix we need a more universal as far as a mobility aid anyway, because people in wheelchairs get screwed anyway. from the bathroom situation, and with the doors situation, and with, honestly, with the ramp situation. There needs to be like a unified standard, not as far as measurements, but as far as measurements in concerns with mobility aids, because there isn't. We need a reform of the Americans with Disabilities Act, not basically this, because this is bad, but we as advocates need to change the law, and we need to fight to change the law, not to fight stuff like this. Because when we fight stuff like this, when we fight like compliance or lack of compliance, rather, stuff like this happens. We've been running around fighting compliance for 27 years, and it hasn't been working. So stop fighting compliance so stuff like this doesn't get written and passed in the Congress, because this is going to get passed. Just knowing how this administration is going to be, this is probably going to get passed if it hasn't been already. So we need to change how we go about fighting ADA violations more than anything else. But anyway, that's my thoughts on this. Pusha Wild Black out. Later.